We thought we knew where we came from, until one skull changed everything. For decades, the story of our origins seemed settled. In classrooms, documentaries, and textbooks, the out-of-Africa theory reigned supreme, a beautiful, simple idea that all modern humans, Homo sapiens, were born in Africa around 300,000 years ago, then spread across the world, replacing every older species along the way. It became more than just science. It was a story about beginnings, unity, and the long journey of humankind. But like all great stories, it might not be the whole truth. In the heart of China's Shaanxi province, beneath layers of ancient soil and time, a face from the deep past, emerged a skull so well preserved that scientists could almost imagine the person who once carried it. They called it the Dali Skull. At first glance, it looked like something familiar, yet unsettling. The heavy brow ridges spoke of something primitive, perhaps even brutish. But the shape of the face, flatter, softer, almost human, told another story. It didn't belong neatly to Homo erectus, the upright walker of Asia, nor did it fully resemble the earliest Homo sapiens fossils from Africa. It was something in between, a bridge between two worlds. The discovery confused and fascinated anthropologists. If this skull truly dated back to around 260,000 years ago, it would mean that human-like features were already appearing in Asia long before the supposed great exodus from Africa. Could this fossil be whispering a truth that had been buried by time, that our species may have more than one cradle of origin? For every answer the Dali Skull offered, it raised new questions. Was humanity's birthplace not a single point, but a vast landscape stretching from Africa to Asia? Could early humans have migrated both ways, sharing ideas, genes, and features in a tangled dance of evolution rather than a one-way march? A single skull, unearthed from the dust of central China, challenges the foundations of everything we thought we knew about who we are. And if its story proves true, then the tale of human evolution is far more complex, far more connected, and far more human than we ever imagined. The story begins in 1978, in the dusty hills of Shaanxi province, central China. Local workers clearing a site stumbled upon fragments of bone heavy, dense, unlike anything ordinary. When scientists arrived, they uncovered one of the most complete ancient skulls ever found in East Asia. It would come to be known as the Dali Skull, named after the county where it was discovered. What they held in their hands was a face frozen in time, a messenger from a chapter of human evolution that had long been missing. At first, researchers struggled to place it. The skull didn't fit neatly into any known category. Decades later, with modern dating methods like TTOSL and IRSL, scientists determined that the layers surrounding the fossil were between 267,000 and 258,000 years old. That meant this being lived roughly 250,000 years ago, long before modern humans were thought to exist outside of Africa. When anthropologists examined the skull closely, they noticed a striking blend of features. Its cranium was large, the brow ridges thick and strongly arched, projecting over the eyes like the shadows of an older world. Yet below them, the face was surprisingly refined. The cheekbones delicate, the nasal bridge flattened, the mid-face broad and smooth. Unlike Homo erectus, whose skulls seemed pinched where the face met the brain case, the Dali skull flowed seamlessly from forehead to jaw. Measurements revealed a calvarial height index of about 45.5 higher than that of typical Chinese Homo erectus, but lower than modern humans. It was as if evolution had paused halfway, leaving behind a snapshot of transformation. To understand what Dali meant, scientists compared it with other known fossils. Peking man from Zhoukoudian, another Chinese Homo erectus, bore straight, bar-like brow ridges different from Dali's graceful arcs. On the other side of the world, fossils from Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, dated to around 300,000 years ago, showed a similar flat mid-face and square eye sockets. How could two skulls, separated by nearly 10,000 kilometers, share such features? Coincidence seemed unlikely. Some called Dali a transitional morph, a bridge between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. Others saw it as a unique local lineage, a missing link that hints our species didn't arise in one place, but in many, through a web of shared ancestry. Regardless of classification, one fact stood out. The Dali skull is one of the best preserved fossils from the Middle Pleistocene, offering an unparalleled window into a time when humanity was still in the making. To hold that skull, to trace its contours, is to look into the face of an ancestor neither entirely familiar nor entirely foreign. It stands as a time capsule from an age when nature was still experimenting with what it meant to be human. And its silent gaze seems to ask us, how many versions of ourselves have there been before we finally became us? For most of modern history, one story has defined our origins. The out of Africa theory tells us that Homo sapiens appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago, then spread out roughly 100,000 years later, replacing older species such as the Neanderthals and Denisovans. It paints a clean, elegant picture, a single birthplace, a single expansion, a single humanity. But the Dali skull, resting quietly in a Chinese museum, doesn't fit neatly inside that frame. When scientists compared Dali's age to the famous fossils from Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, they were stunned. The two were nearly the same age, both hovering around 250,000 years old. That meant features associated with modern humans were appearing in East Asia at the same time they emerged in Africa. It was no longer a tale of one region leading and the others following. Instead, it began to look like humanity's spark might have ignited in several places at once. The Dali skull's combination of archaic and modern traits, a large brain case, a flatter face, smaller cheekbones, suggested a lineage moving toward what we recognize as us. If those changes were happening in Asia so early, the evolutionary story wasn't a straight line out of Africa but a network, spreading and reconnecting. Anthropologist Sheila Arthur, who led a recent analysis of the Dali fossil, put it simply, gene flow could have been multidirectional. If you never coming, her words carry deep implications. For decades, scientists assumed the flow of genes moved one way from Africa outward. But what if traits, ideas, and even people were moving both ways, crossing deserts and mountains, reshaping populations on every continent? Arthur suggested that some of the very features we associate with European or African ancestors, like a higher forehead or softer facial contour, could have originated in Asia and traveled west through waves of interbreeding. Evidence supporting this idea comes from another remarkable fossil, WLH50, found in Australia and dated to about 26,000 years ago. Despite the vast difference in time and distance, WLH50's brow ridges and facial proportions closely resemble Dali's. That continuity hints at a long-lasting regional lineage in East Asia and Australasia, a thread of ancestry woven quietly through deep time. Modern anthropologists now describe this tangled process as a braided stream rather than a single river. Picture human evolution not as one arrow shooting out of Africa, but as a web of streams diverging, merging, and flowing back upon themselves. Across hundreds of thousands of years, small groups migrated, mixed, and adapted, carrying pieces of the human story in every direction. So, when we look at the Dali skull, we aren't just staring into the past of China or Asia. We're seeing a mirror that reflects all of us. Its face reminds us that our origins might not be confined to one cradle, but to many fires burning across the ancient world, connected by the timeless current of life itself. As scientists dug deeper into the mystery of the Dali skull, new research began to reshape how we understand human evolution. In 2023, evolutionary geneticist Alan R. Templeton published a groundbreaking analysis arguing that the key to our story isn't isolation, it's connection. He described human evolution as a vast, multi-directional web of gene flow linking Africa, Asia, and Europe. Populations didn't live in sealed boxes. They exchanged genes, technologies, and ideas across thousands of miles and hundreds of thousands of years. Humanity, he suggested, wasn't born in one place, but woven together by countless threads of migration. This perspective resonates with the work of Chris Stringer, one of the leading voices in paleoanthropology. Once a firm supporter of the Out of Africa model, Stringer has recently refined his view. In a 2024 interview, he described our origins as a million-year journey, not a single origin. His words capture a profound truth that becoming human was not a sudden event, but a slow, tangled process unfolding across continents. Evolution wasn't a straight arrow. It was a living network, where species met, merged, and diverged again. To support this emerging picture, other fossils across East Asia began to tell similar stories. The Harbin skull, also called Dragon Man, discovered in northeastern China, shows a large brain case and delicate facial bones that may place it as a sister lineage to Homo sapiens, or perhaps a relative of the mysterious Denisovans. Then came Yunxian II, a nearly 1 million-year-old fossil that hints that East Asian humans split from earlier ancestors far earlier than expected. Additional discoveries from Jinyushan, Maba, and Huanglongdong reveal a fascinating mosaic of traits, a mix of archaic and modern features appearing in different combinations. Together, these finds suggest that East Asia wasn't just a side story in human evolution, it was an active frontier. The Dali, Harbin, and Yunxian fossils form a chain of continuity, tracing a long internal evolution that paralleled and possibly influenced what was happening in Africa. Rather than one birthplace, there may have been several centers of innovation, all linked through the ebb and flow of migration. Still, the debate is far from settled. Genetic evidence from mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosomes continues to point toward Africa as our deepest genetic root. Many researchers warn against overstating Asia's role, reminding us that DNA tells a different, though not contradictory, story, one where Africa remains the central hub, but not the only player. Perhaps both views are true in part. Maybe our species didn't rise from a single spark, but from many small fires burning across the ancient world. Maybe we are, as some scientists now say, children of many lands woven by time, not born from one place. The Dali skull and the web of discoveries surrounding it remind us that human evolution was never simple. It was messy, interconnected, and beautifully complex, just like humanity itself. The Dali skull stands as quiet but powerful evidence that human evolution was never a single, straight path. Its ancient face, half familiar and half forgotten, tells us that our story was written not by one people or one land, but by many. From Africa's sunlit plains to Asia's river valleys, from Europe's caves to Australia's coasts, every population left its mark on the shape of who we are today. The Dali discovery reminds us that the rise of Homo sapiens was not a clean break from the past, but a woven tapestry, a living network built through migration, connection, and exchange. Across hundreds of thousands of years, genes and ideas flowed both ways from Africa to Asia, and back again, blending, mixing, and evolving. The result was not one isolated species, but a network of humanity, stretching across continents long before borders or nations existed. This web of interaction, this braided stream of ancestry, created a species uniquely capable of adaptation and creativity. It gave birth to the imagination that would one day carve tools, paint caves, and tell stories around firelight. In the light of this, the Dali skull is more than a fossil. It is a reminder that our origins are shared, that no single continent can claim to be the sole cradle of humankind. As one scientist beautifully put it, we are not from one cradle, but from countless fires that kept each other alive. Those fires still burn in all of us, in our curiosity, in our longing to explore, and in our endless need to understand where we came from. So as we look at the Dali skull today, we don't just see bones. We see connection, the invisible bridges of time that link every person on this planet. We see proof that diversity is not division, but the very force that made us human. And maybe that's the real story of our species. Not one of separation, but of reunion. A story that began everywhere and still continues in you, in me, in all of us. If you've enjoyed this journey into our shared past, take a moment to reflect and to share it. Leave a thought, a question, or a spark of curiosity, because the greatest adventure of all is discovering where we truly come from.